In the last couple of lectures, we generated a delete post link, which holds arguments like the action and the post. And then we handled this URL request and deleted the post, but only if the user has the permission to delete the post. But then we said if some malicious user knows this URL, he can't do anything with it because we check if the user is logged in. But you can be logged in and he can trick you into clicking into this link, maybe by sending an email with this link and some button or something like that. So by visiting this link, the post will be deleted, but you didn't really intend to delete it. So to make sure that it's you who clicked this button and you're not forced into clicking it, we will use something called nonces. So a nonce is basically another argument that we will send along with the action and the post. And this argument will be a hash generated by WordPress using a certain function. And then when we receive the request in the server, we will verify that this hash is a valid one, and if not, we will not perform any action. So let's do it, and we'll explain more while we're coding it. So when we are constructing the URL, we need to add another argument. So let's add another argument called nonce. And this will be generated by a function called wp create nonce. And it takes an action, and this is the action that you are performing, so you can call it any arbitrary name. So in our case, we are deleting a post, so let's call it, let's also prefix it to avoid any collision. So theme name delete post. And we can also add the ID, so delete post underscore and then the ID. This will make our action more specific. So we now created a hash, and this hash will contain some information like the current user ID and the current session token. And the session token is a token generated when you log into WordPress, and it's a unique token. If you log in with the same account but in another browser, the token will be different. So it's a unique token for your current session, and it also contains information about the time that this nonce was generated at, and it also contains your action that you specified here. So it's a hashed string that contains all of these information, and we'll send it. And then when we are processing the form, we will call another function. Or first we should make sure that we have a nonce field, and if we don't have, we should not perform any action. So let's write another if condition. So is set, and then get nonce. So if this value is not set, or even if it's set, we still need to verify that it's a valid nonce. So we call a function called wp verify nonce, and it takes the nonce itself, the hashed string itself, which would be this one, and the action, which we called delete post and then ID. So, and the ID in this case will be the post in the get array. So if these conditions are not met, we will do nothing. So now if you don't have a nonce field, we will do nothing. So even if we have this URL with the post and the action, it won't work unless you have a nonce field. And also this nonce field, even if it exists, it should be a valid nonce field. So wp verify nonce will verify that this nonce field is valid and not just any hash text. And I'll tell you in a moment how WordPress checks if it's valid or not. And I'm sorry we have a typo here, or we missed a not here. We need to check that if it's not a verified nonce, we need to return and not a verified nonce. So let's see now. So let's try and delete this. And as you can see in the URL in the bottom left, we have a nonce field now. And when we send this nonce field to the server, it will confirm that it's a valid one. And if yes, it will delete the post. So let's try. And it's deleted. So let's restore this one. And now let's just copy this link. So now if you have a user that somehow made us click on this link without the nonce field, nothing will happen because there is no nonce field. And even if he passes a nonce field, it must be a valid one, and he will never be able to generate a valid one. So if we write anything here, it will be invalid and nothing will be deleted. So only if this is a valid field like this one, now the test2 is deleted. So the bottom line for this is that this link it will never work except if we pass a valid nonce here, and nobody will be able to generate a valid nonce. And to understand that, let's take a look at the WP create nonce and verify nonce source codes. So the generate nonce function, it will generate a hash using the WP hash function, and this hash will consist of I, and I is the result of WP nonce-tick function, and the WP nonce-tick function returns a number which will remain the same. It will only change every 12 hours, and you'll know why in a moment. And then we have the action, and this is the action that we defined here. And then we have the user ID, and then we have the token of the current session. So this is what the nonce consists of. So now when we create this nonce and we need to verify it on the server, we use WP verify nonce. And what this will do is that it will reconstruct your hash using the I and the action and the UID and the token. And then if the two hashes are equal, it will return 1 or 2, otherwise it will return false. So as you can see, the information used here is very specific, and it's impossible for anyone to be able to generate a hash like this. I just want to mention quickly that the 1 and 2, 1 will be returned if the nonce is generated from 0 to 12 hours ago, and 2 will be returned if the nonce is generated from 12 to 24 hours ago. So both values are truthy. If you give 1 or 2 to an if condition, it will return true. But that's just in case you want to know if the nonce is generated from 12 hours or more. And that's the point of the WP nonce-tick function. As I mentioned, this function will increment by 1 every 12 hours. So if you add the I here when you're checking and the result matches the given nonce, that means that this nonce is generated from 0 to 12 hours ago. However, if it matched I minus 1, that means that the WP tick function is incremented by 1, and that means that 12 hours has passed since you generated the nonce that you gave to the WP verify nonce function. So I know this might be confusing, so you can take a look and at this function if you want. You don't have to know the details of the nonce functions, you just need to know how to use them. And I also put you a link to a post here, which contains some in-depth information about nonces. So that was user roles and capabilities in nonces. And I created this introduction section to these topics because we will use them in the next section when we start creating custom fields. So see you in the next section.